Often I get asked what's the biggest mistake that you can make when repurposing content, and one of my answers will always be when you do not respect the new audience and platform that you're repurposing for.
Welcome to the Content 10X Podcast, the show where content creators learn how to harness the power of content repurposing. And now, your host, Amy Woods.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Content 10X podcast. I'm your host, Amy Woods, the founder of Content 10X, and this week is about lazy live stream repurposing. Now, I think it can be a great idea to repurpose your video live streams. In fact, so much so that often when I get asked what is the best type of content to repurpose, you'll hear me say that I think it's video, and if you can make it work, it would be live video. In fact, in episode 151 of the podcast called Is There a Best Type of Content to Repurpose, I conclude that all things being equal, it's live video. So go check that out, content10x.com/151. Now, I do really emphasise that there's no one-size-fits-all approach, and that what's most important is consistency, quality, publishing and promotion. Now, it does come down to what your business is, what your audience like to consume, where they like to hang out, what you're confident and capable of creating, and lots of other factors as well. But if I had a gun to my head and I was asked what is the best type of content to repurpose, I'd say live video is the best content to repurpose. Now, the reasons why: video is the most versatile and dynamic content. It's the top of the content pyramid because you can repurpose video in so many ways. You can repurpose video into more videos, so slice and dice longer videos down into shorter videos. You can take the audio and repurpose into audio and podcast content. You can repurpose videos into written content, into blog posts and articles and tweets, etc. You can create graphics, you can create social media posts and so on. So video allows you to branch out into the greatest number of content types, which is why I think it's the best. And the reason I then say live video can be the icing on the cake is because live streaming creates a closer experience for your audience. It feels a lot more personal and a lot more authentic. So if you create live stream videos and then if you segment them well, so you have the live sections and then maybe more the core content as well, then not only have you created that valuable connection with your audience and a shared experience with them, but then if you do it well, then you'll have the repurposing potential of any normal recorded video. But that's the most important thing here, if you do it well, so if it's done correctly, because nothing drives me more mad than when people repurpose live streams poorly. Because often I get asked what's the biggest mistake that you can make when repurposing content, and one of my answers will always be when you do not respect the new audience and platform that you're repurposing for. So you must always make your content fit for the platform. Now let me tell you a little story. The other day I was listening to a podcast. Now, I don't think on this podcast they usually repurpose a live stream to be a podcast, but this time that's what they'd done. So firstly, the live stream started and the guest had trouble connecting. So there was a bit of an intro and then a lot of, sorry, my connection isn't right. Can you hear me? The host asked the audience on the live stream to comment in the comment section if they couldn't hear. There was all sorts of kerfuffle basically with the tech, with the audio, with speaking to the viewers of the live stream. It was really, really messy. And then it kind of got going and the conversation went well once they got over the live stream hiccups. And then later on in the episode, the guest's internet went. He just completely dropped off the live stream. So the host carried on going, saying things like, hopefully he'll be back soon. He must have had internet connection issues. And then he just waffled on for a while and just tried to fill the gap, hoping that the guest would come back. And eventually the guest did come back and they carried on the conversation, but it was just a little bit of a mess there in the middle as well. Now, these things happen on live streams. That's the risk that you take when you go live. But my thoughts were, why on earth was I, the podcast listener, having to listen to all of that? And it really, really drove me mad. Now, maybe I have heightened sensitivity to these things because content repurposing is my expertise. It's what I have a business in, it's what I do. But I just couldn't believe my ears. Now, I'm a podcast listener. Why on earth have you not just edited out the live elements and the things that I do not need to hear? Because it's not adding value whatsoever for me to hear the issues at the start, the time when the guest dropped off, all the back and forward, even the conversations with the viewers about asking them to comment if they could hear and things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, surely you have someone who does your podcast editing, and how could you not just ask them to go through and edit out those bits? Or even if you do it yourself, then why would you not just go the extra effort to make the audio content suitable for the listener? So to me, it showed no regard and no thought whatsoever for me as a podcast listener. It seemed lazy, and you could even say just a bit disrespectful of my time. And one thing for sure is that there was no focus or thought for quality of the podcast. It was very slapdash. Just grab the audio from the live stream. Doesn't matter what happened in that live stream, just grab it, probably added an intro and an outro, and that became a podcast episode. And to me, that is not a good example of repurposing live streams to a podcast. Hey, just a little break from this week's episode to let you know about becoming a Content 10x Insider. If you want more content repurposing tips and advice, then why not join hundreds of business owners, marketers, and content creators who get them delivered straight to their inbox once a week by subscribing to the Content 10x newsletter. As well as tips and advice, you get industry updates, inspiring stories, exclusive content, offers, and more. You can subscribe at content10x.com/newsletter, and there's a link in the show notes too. Okay, back to this week's episode. Now at Content 10x, we work with clients who live stream and they are on our Content 10x service. So when it comes to repurposing the live stream into a podcast, which is what some of those clients, not all of them, want, then we extract the audio from the live stream and then really go to town to make it a podcast episode suitable for the audio listener. So we take out those live interactions, we take out hiccups, and we generally just tighten the whole thing up so that it's suitable for the audience, for the platform, so that it's quality and so that it's valuable content. Now, if you want to see an example of this, you should check out the Visual Lounge by TechSmith, a client that we work with who are absolutely fantastic. The Visual Lounge, it's such an awesome show. And basically they host a live stream every week. And then we repurpose that into lots of content for them, including a podcast. So if you go to techsmith.com and find their podcast, or if you just search for the Visual Lounge on any podcast app, take a listen to their episodes because they are repurposed from a live stream. And also, just when we're talking about repurposing live streams, if we are repurposing the live stream for more video content, so let's say the live stream is also going to become a video that goes on a website or goes onto YouTube, then again, we would make sure that we edit out any live elements, anything that is not useful for that new audience consuming the content in a different way. So we would certainly, in this case, with the example that I just shared, have been taking out that first 10 minutes of back and forward. We take out the bit where the guest dropped off. We take out bits where they're asking the audience to comment and things like that, because in my mind, it would be crazy to have those elements in the repurposed content that is no longer the live stream. So to me, when I hear really, really sloppy, slapdash live stream repurposing, like I did the other day with the show that I just mentioned, I wonder why the host didn't hire someone to repurpose it in a quality way. It makes me think, are they tight? Do they not invest in things? Are they a bit lazy? Are they just really slapdash? So all of these thoughts are going through my mind, which is not great for the host. So what can you do instead? Well, I've already mentioned it, but firstly, editing. Another thing that you can do is record an intro and an outro that's for your podcast audience only, where you explain a bit more about how this interview was recorded as a live stream, so you can set the scene and you can talk to your podcast listeners and let them know what they're about to listen to. And you can also kind of mention it again at the end as well. So if you aren't going to edit out the live bits, at least you have provided an explanation and, like I said, set the scene. So that's something that you can do. And then other things you can do is preparation as well. So thinking a bit more about your audio listeners when you are planning and recording the live stream in the first place. For example, even just telling guests to wear headphones and giving them a bit more guidance beforehand if they need it on setting up microphones and headphones and things like that. Just thinking of the audio basics, because the smallest of things really can go a long way. And it then doesn't take too much to go from what seems to be a fairly slapdash and lazy approach to an audience-focused and platform-specific focused piece of content. So there are some things you can do. Do the post edit, or at least set the scene with a special intro and outro for your podcast listeners, and just do that additional thought process and preparation beforehand, remembering that the live stream is also going to become a podcast episode or going to become other video content as well. So just thinking how you can plan through, because as I always say, repurposing shouldn't be an afterthought. Repurposing is something that you should be considering right from the very start when you're planning that piece of content. Now, you may be listening to this and thinking that you don't do live streams and that even if you do, maybe you don't repurpose them. But my point is really to think about all the ways that you repurpose content, whatever content you're creating, and just assess for yourself, are you respecting the new audience? And are there any things that you can do to enhance the process so that you focus on the platform, the audience, and the quality with all of your repurposed content? So thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found it useful. I hope there's been some takeaways and maybe some different ways that you will approach your content and your content repurposing. If you want help, then we offer an end-to-end content repurposing service here at Content 10x. So please do check that out. Head to content10x.com to find out more. If you haven't got a copy yet, then please do grab a copy of my book, Content 10x. You can go to content10x.com/book or find it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And it's just really the ultimate guide to repurposing every type of content. And also do become a Content 10x insider. Get our weekly email full of content repurposing goodness and updates, tips, advice, news, and more. Just one weekly email sent out every Friday, and that's content10x.com/newsletter to become a Content 10x insider. All that's left to say is thank you so much for listening. Please do stay in touch with me on social media, and I'll catch you in the next episode.